Ford introduces the new Futura. A dramatic combination of styling and technology for 1978 and beyond.
Back in 1978, with fuel economy mandates forcing Detroit's Big Three automakers to downsize, Ford introduced a new rear-wheel drive compact car platform that would eventually underpin 12 different models. Known best as the Fox body, the first Fox models were the Ford Fairmont and its twin, the Mercury Zephyr.
Ford in your future is coming, the new Ford Fairmont.
Although the third-gen Mustang would launch a year later to become the most famous and longest-running Fox body model, the Fairmont, along with the sportier Fairmont Futura coupe, were also a big hit, but only in its first couple of years, as Ford had to adapt to the increasing popularity of front-wheel drive, leading to the end of the Fairmont after just 6 years. This is a story of the Ford Fairmont. This is my old car.
Test drive Fairmont October 7th. Fairmont, the newest, better idea from Ford.
Are you sure it isn't time for a colorful metaphor?
As a kid growing up in the late 70s to early 80s, I couldn't help but notice how much the typical car was not just shrinking from the big-wheeled barges my parents used to drive, but also embracing a new style that could be viewed today as a complete lack of style. I remember this transition with cars my parents owned, like the Citation, but also at Chrysler with their K-cars. Both were a complete rethinking that was forced onto the Big Three when the once endless supply of oil was running low. Big pretentious land yachts weren't fashionable anymore, and Ford, under the direction of then-President Lee Iacocca, launched the development of the Fox platform in December of 1973.
Ford Fairmont. Test drive America's success car at your local Ford dealer.
This isn't to say that Ford didn't have small car platforms before Fox, as Japanese imports forced the Big Three to offer competitive small cars back in the 1960s. The compact Ford Falcon launched in 1960.
And it goes 4,000 miles between oil changes.
4,000 miles? That's virtually beyond comprehension.
Followed by the Maverick in 1970. The Maverick shared the Falcon's platform, so the Maverick was riding on a design from the 1950s, when the Fox body was first conceived. And of course, there was the Pinto, but it was classified as a subcompact. Although the Pinto shared a similar design with other subcompacts of the time, with the location of its fuel tank, it was that specific feature that would make the Pinto one of the most infamous models for Ford. And yet the Pinto lasted 4 years longer, and sold twice as many units as the nearly forgotten Fairmont. GM started the development of the Citation's X-body platform around the same time that Ford began developing the Fox platform. But whereas GM tried to emulate Japanese competitors that were transitioning to front-wheel drive, Ford utilized some parts from the European models, such as the Granada that sold in the UK, which was rear-wheel drive and still popular there. The debut of the Fairmont in 1978 offered 3 body styles, a 4-door sedan, a 4-door wagon, and the oddly named 2-door sedan. I say oddly because to me, 2-door means coupe, not sedan.
Fairmont has the lowest sticker price of any midsize car.
We'd love it even without the low price, but not as much.
However, shortly after the first 3 body styles arrived, the Fairmont Futura was introduced, which Ford referred to as a 2-door coupe. The Futura name was first used by Ford on a concept car, a design which, although was too bizarre to make it to production, it was a perfect Batmobile for the 1960s Batman TV series.
I'm Batman.
Ford would later use the Futura name as a trim level of the Falcon, and Ford of Australia had a Ford Futura beginning in 1962. The Fairmont Futura shared a similar look to the 7th Gen Thunderbird with its large wraparound B-pillar. In fact, it was so similar that I suspect it could have taken sales away from the Thunderbird, or possibly vice versa, at least during 1978 and 79, the only 2 years where the Futura coupe overlapped with the 7th Gen T-Bird. The Futura also differed from the base Fairmont by having quad headlamps as opposed to dual, and a 1978 Futura holds the title of the 100 millionth Ford ever built, on November 15, 1978. As was expected back then, a nearly duplicate model was offered for Mercury, called the Zephyr. All versions of the Zephyr had the Fairmont Futura's quad headlamps, including the Mercury clone of the Futura, called the Z7.
There's a new personal car in town. Zephyr Z7 from Lincoln Mercury.
This made the Futura and Z7 look nearly identical, except for different grills and badging. This was another example of how the Mercury brand was continuing its slide towards having little to no purpose in the lineup, as its original intention to be a more upscale Ford was lost here, considering the Zephyr didn't really offer anything different than the Fairmont did. Whereas the Futura and Z7 models tried to have a bit of style, at least from the huge B-pillars rearward, the other more boxy versions could today be considered as completely lacking in style. However, more likely, it may have been an attempt by Ford to emulate and compete with European cars, specifically Volvo. In fact, this Car and Driver article suggested that very opinion. They even praised the ESO trim level, which tried to make the car have what they considered to be a European flair. Volvo models were well known then for being extremely boxy.
Volvo. Boxy, but good. Are you crazy?
But they also had a reputation for safety, thanks in no small part to being built like tanks. But Ford didn't have the same safety reputation, so instead the boxy look was perfect for fleet or government vehicles. The latter could be seen on full display in one of the most famous movies during the Fairmont's run, E.T. There were several Fairmonts in the film, and I suspect they were chosen specifically for their blandness, so that they didn't distract from the movie heroes. Or maybe because cars like this just screamed deep state conspiracy for the time. You may have seen Fairmonts as police cars back then as well, or maybe only in the movies, like these in 1989's Batman.
I'm Batman.
That's because they weren't all that popular as police cars, even though Ford provided a police package for both the Fairmont and Zephyr. The police package beefed up the springs, shocks, cooling system, and alternator, but still had the same engine choices. The latter probably the best reason why it wasn't all that popular as a cop car. In fact, in the promotional releases from Ford, they came right out and said it would be best for non-pursuit type assignments. The smaller size of the Fairmont compared to a Ford Crown Victoria probably didn't help either. As fuel efficiency was the primary purpose behind the Fairmont's existence, horsepower was, not unexpectedly, far from impressive. Surprisingly, they offered 3 different engine sizes: an inline 4-cylinder, an inline 6-cylinder, and a V8. Although the V8 maxed out at 139 horsepower during the first 2 model years.
And the sticker price?
Hundreds less than a comparably equipped Citation or K car. In short, Fairmont won't cost you an arm and a leg.
The 4-cylinder engines range from 88 to 92 horses, and the 6-cylinder range from 85 to 91 horses. The 6's only advantage was slightly higher torque ratings than the 4, but at the expense of fuel economy. In 1980, and only for that year, a Turbo 4 was offered that made 120 horses, borrowed from the Mustang Cobra. These models could be identified from the outside by their hood bulge. The V8's lower fuel economy prompted a decrease in 1981 by nearly 50 cubic inches and a drop in power by 20 horses, but impressive torque for the time at nearly 200 pound-feet.
What I needed was a miracle. What I found was a Fairmont.
Prior to 1980, the Futura name was only used on the coupe with a wraparound B-pillar. However, for 1980, Ford put the Futura name on the sedan and also on the wagon for 1981. The Futura still had the quad headlamps, making it the only way to tell the difference from the non-Futura models. But also in 1980, the Thunderbird downsized to also share the Fox platform and lost its prominent B-pillar.
Like this dazzling array of electronic magic.
You know something, Buck Rogers? I'll be there.
Although the Fox platform was proving to be a popular option for Ford, expanding to 6 model lines by 1980, the addition of the T-Bird, as well as the 6th generation Mercury Cougar to the Fox lineup, was taking away sales for the Fairmont and its Mercury Zephyr twin. The combined sales of the Fairmont and Zephyr were over 600,000 in their inaugural year of 1978. However, sales numbers dropped each year, dropping to less than 200,000 across both brands by 1982.
More car for less money than last year. Beautifully priced, beautifully equipped. Fairmont Futura. Hi, this is Casey Kasem.
In 1981, seeing the potential for another model to share the Fox body platform, Ford came up with another body style that would be based on the Futura coupe, a pickup truck. Ford called it the Durango, a name that Dodge would later use over a decade later for a midsize SUV. Ford's last car-based pickup, the Ranchero, ended production in 1979 due to being unable to compete with the Chevy El Camino and its GMC twin, the Caballero. Although the GM models had recently been downsized and nearly the same size as the Durango, attempting a new El Camino competitor was still far from a sure bet. This may be why Ford didn't fully commit to their own production facilities and taking on the design and production themselves. Instead, Ford formed a joint venture with the National Coach Corporation to convert existing Futura coupe models, taking advantage of the wide B-pillar design to allow everything in front of the B-pillar to remain unchanged. Only around 200 Futura coupes were converted to pickups, as the demand simply wasn't there, making the Ford Durango a rare oddball model that few have ever seen in person. Although the early 80s are well known for boxy car designs, behind the scenes, Ford was planning a radical change, a move to more aerodynamic shapes that could continue to improve fuel efficiency. This redesign was underway when Chrysler debuted its K cars for 1981. They were arguably even more bland than the Fairmont, but thanks to all the marketing featuring the new Chrysler CEO prominently, who was, ironically, the former Ford president who greenlit the Fox body, Lee Iacocca, the K cars sold well in their early years. But with sales of the Fairmont and Zephyr dropping every year, Ford took a more daring approach to their replacements, the Ford Tempo and Mercury Topaz, despite the success of the very square K cars. The Tempo and Topaz weren't the first Ford cars to transition from box to bubble, as the 9th Gen Ford Thunderbird and 6th Gen Mercury Cougar beat them to it in 1983. Whereas those cars tried to hold on to a shrinking personal luxury coupe market, the Tempo and Topaz were sized to compete directly with the Chrysler K cars, as well as the nearly as boxy GM J cars, which were spread across 5 brands.
A new Cadillac!
Ford did plenty of commercials for their new compact coupes and sedans, leaving the Fairmont and Zephyr to be forgotten to history. Although the Fairmont name would never return, the Futura returned in Australia in 1993 and lasted through 2008. And the Zephyr name was resurrected by Lincoln in 2006 for their new compact sedan, but that name only lasted 1 year, as Lincoln started renaming most of its models with the MK nomenclature, and the Zephyr became the MKZ. Although only being sold for 6 model years, the combined sales of the Fairmont and Zephyr were still close to 2 million, which is not a bad run for any car. But by the end of 1983, there were 7 other models still on the Fox platform, all of which had started after the Fairmont, and only 1 other Fox model that ended before 1983, the midsize Granada. However, by 1989, only the Mustang and Lincoln Mark VII remained on the Fox body, and the Mustang was eventually the only Fox body left at the platform's end in 1993, although some may say the Fox body didn't end then, as the 4th Gen Mustang was on the SN95 platform, which itself was technically a modified version of the Fox body. You can learn more about the Fox Body Mustang in its own episode I did a while back.
If you don't shut up, I'm going to put the car in park and just sit here.
Ooh. I want to show you a car I'm crazy about.
Considering Ford's complete overhaul of so many models in the 1980s, from the Tempo and Topaz in 1984 to the Taurus and Sable in 1986, it was clear that the unpretentious and less risky boxy design of the first Fox body model, the Fairmont, was destined to stay in Ford's past. And thanks to Ford no longer selling any sedans in North America, the Fairmont name will most likely remain a relic, to never be seen here again. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, click the like button and subscribe to my channel. If you once owned a car from the 80s to mid-2000s that you rarely see today, and would like it featured in a future episode, leave a reply in the comments, or contact me at the email shown here. See you next time.
Our weapons, those are his hands! Please, we know him.